At 5:43 a.m. my headlights tore through a wall of dirt and ornamental landscaping, blowing out a neat ring of solar path lights like they were fireworks. I crawled from a waist-high tunnel, dust coating my hard hat, and waved at the line of SUVs stuck behind Cedar Hollow's shiny new residents-only gate. The HOA president shrieked with a voice sharp enough to peel paint. "He's breaching the pergola." My tractor rolled out of the tunnel like a polite rhinoceros, rumbling through her precious landscaping before parking beneath the no farm traffic sign that now dangled by a single decorative screw. The look on her face, worth every blister I'd earned digging that tunnel. Every night I'd spent bent over plats and legal documents until my eyes burned. I'm Evan Rohr. I like quiet mornings with coffee before the chickens stir. My Tenecor Pecan and Pepper Farm borders Cedar Hollow Estates, a neighborhood where the hedges are cubic, the sidewalks immaculate, and gossip flows like tap water. I keep to myself, fixing fences, tending crops, sipping bourbon on my porch while the sunset paints my fields gold. The thorn in my side, Deirdre Oak, the HOAS, self-crowned queen. She carries her clipboard the way a knight carries a shield, quoting covenants and restrictions as if Moses himself etched them in stone. Her voice has that certain quality of someone who peaked his hall monitor in middle school and never let it go. But here's the rub. My deed includes a century-old easement, one gravel lane carved in 1923 that cuts across what is now Cedar Hollow. It's my only direct route to the county road. The only way I can get a seed delivery without driving 17 miles around a mountain. The easement existed long before the manicured lawns, long before Deirdre, long before Cedar Hollow even had a name. She, however, calls it visual clutter. First came the pastel courtesy, notice lavender and mint green stuffed into my mailbox like poisoned candy. Each one scolded me for the sin of agricultural odors interfering with pedestrian vistas. Then came the drone, buzzing over my pastures like a mechanical vulture, circling my chicken coop and dropping laminated HOA patrol observing cards onto my tomato plants like confetti from some passive-aggressive parade. Deirdre worked the rumor mill like a factory foreman. She claimed I ran an unlicensed slaughterhouse. The only thing I've ever slaughtered was a watermelon at the county fair. She swore my rooster was a hate symbol for daring to crow at dawn disturbing what she called the meditation hour. She even accused my scarecrow of violating anthropomorphic signage rules, which I'm still not convinced are real. Then, without telling me, she scheduled a vote for a Tuesday at 2 p.m., the exact time every farmer in the county would be knee-deep in chores. Overnight, my easement was sealed with an iron gate, complete with granite pylons, brass lettering, Cedar Hollow Estates, a place of distinction, and flower planters piled like sandbags. The irony. I've lived here my whole life. Most of Cedar Hollow's locals have been around 5 years, tops, but suddenly, I was the intruder. My delivery truck idled on the county road while Deirdre, recording me on her rose gold phone case, chirped sweetly. We chose a serene aesthetic. Please respect our serenity. Behind her, 3 board members bobbed their heads in unison, their matching polo shirts practically glowing in the morning sun. "I called the sheriff." He glanced at the gate, shrugged, and muttered that it looked civil. Deirdre smiled like she'd just iced a cake, her lipstick so bright it could guide a ship to harbor. 2 nights later, the sprinklers along the HOAS greenbelt erupted at 2 a.m., soaking the soil into pudding. I woke to the hiss of water where there shouldn't be any. By sunrise, I knew why. Deirdre had poured a ribbon of concrete across my easement under the guise of an emergency beautification initiative. On top of it, she planted a pergola-white lattice with climbing roses that hadn't yet climbed, drip lines dangling like cheap jewelry. It looked less like landscaping and more like a wedding arch that had lost its way. She didn't stop. She filed a 17-page trespass complaint against me for daring to step across her landscaping to feed my animals. Every subsection cited HOA rules that hadn't existed a week earlier. When I tried to edge a planter aside just enough to get through with a wheelbarrow, she called 911 and breathlessly told dispatch there was a man with a tractor threatening our gazebo economy. The poor dispatcher asked her to repeat that phrase 3 times. That's when I stopped talking to Deirdre and started digging into the records. At the county office, I told the clerk who'd manned that desk for 40 years, remembered my grandfather. She led me into a back room that smelled like dust and old paper, tugged open a filing cabinet drawer that squeaked like it hadn't moved since the Clinton years. And there it was, a 1923 plat. It didn't just confirm my surface easement. It revealed a subsurface irrigation and maintenance easement to an old drainage culvert running directly beneath Cedar Hollow, as so-called Serenity Strip. Marked in faded blue ink, the notes detailed storm runoff and field drainage, connecting my farm to the roadside ditch, which meant one thing. Deirdre had blocked a public drain with her designer mulch, granite boulders, and 6 cubic yards of decorative river rock. Paper, it turns out, beats pergola. I filed the old easement with the county engineer and the fire marshal, copied deda, and sent a single text to the road and bridge crew. Historic culvert obstructed. Ingress blocked. An hour later, Bob Martinez, the county engineer, called me back. His voice was clipped, controlled, the kind of professional anger only a bureaucrat can summon when someone tampers with infrastructure. That was my green light. I rented a compact excavator, borrowed 2 tunnel boxers from a friend in utilities, and by headlamp reopened the culvert from my side. The original markers were still there if you knew where to look. I shored it safely, stayed within the recorded width, and treated the 100-year-old field stone like it was sacred. It was beautiful in its simplicity. A piece of history buried beneath layers of landscape fabric and fertilizer runoff. By sunrise, I popped out under the HOA as manicured greenbelt trite. Behind their shiny new gate, exactly where the old plat said I would. I set out cones in a perfect professional pattern, planted a sign reading "Culvert maintenance in progress," and radioed the county. Minutes later, sirens rose snot. Frantic ones, but the deliberate chorus of official vehicles converging on a problem. The engineer was first. One look at the concrete damming a public drain and he let out a low whistle, snapping photos, muttering about federal watershed violations. The fire marshal measured the gate's clearance with a tape, shook his head, and scribbled notes. The environmental officer knelt in the mud, scooped up a handful of soggy bark, and in a tone sharp enough to cut glass asked, "Deirdre, if the HOA had a permit to choke a storm channel with petunias and river rock?" Deirdre arrived in her pink golf cart, "OA President" stenciled proudly on the side. She tried to hand them a parchment certificate she called a special aesthetic authorization, complete with cursive font, a butterfly watermark, and exactly 0 legal authority. The fire marshal actually laughed out loud. The emergency HOA meeting that followed was chaos in cardigans. Residents packed the clubhouse, whispering nervously, while county officials lined the walls. Deputies resting hands on their belts, one man holding up a drowned solar light like Exhibit A. Then Bob rolled in a cart-mounted projector. He played drone footage, not hers this time, but mine, borrowed back from a neighbor who was sick of midnight rule changes. The footage was damning. Deirdre, on camera, at 3 a.m., directing contractors to pour concrete into the culvert, instructing them to bury it under decorative stone. Clear voice, clear intent, clear obstruction. Next came the receipts. HOA funds drained for $18,000 on the gate, $12,000 for the pergola, $1,200 for aromatherapy misters to Mosque Farm smells, hidden invoices for unannounced emergency meetings. A particularly ugly email where she schemed with a developer. "Block my access, forced me to sell cheap." That was a nail. Carl, the HOAS, frazzled property manager, adjusted his tie and announced Deirdre's immediate suspension pending a vote. The fire marshal issued a $10,000 citation for blocked emergency egress. The county added $25,000 in stormwater violations. The DA announced an investigation into interference with a recorded easement and tampering with drainage infrastructure. Felony territory. A deputy uncapped his pen and served the HOA a mandatory access order. Gate unlocked, pylons cut, planters moved within 24 hours or faced more penalties. My tractor rumbled home across the newly cleared lane like a war hero in a victory parade. Mud tracks, spelling freedom. The fallout was swift. Deirdre lost the presidency in an 87-1 vote, one being her. She lost her pergola to a county demolition order. Lost her clubhouse keycard in a second unanimous vote. Right there in front of everyone. The court ordered the HOA to fund a proper gravel access road with reflective markers, and awarded me $37,000 in damages, plus $18,000 in legal fees. The developer she colluded with. Criminal fines of $150,000 and his license revoked. And Deirdre herself, sentenced to 300 hours of community service clearing culverts every weekend in a neon vest stamped, "Flow Matters." When the judge read the verdict, her face turned the color of spoiled milk. Her clipboard slipped from her hands, clattering on the courtroom floor like a thunderclap. Her lips quivered, forming one last broken protest. By the aesthetics. No one answered, because in the end, paper always beats pergola.